attending. We will begin in about 1 minute just to give people more time to come into the room. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat window in the meantime, and we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Simplifying Your CMS Implementation with LiveFirst. To begin, I would like to just mention a few housekeeping notes. If you would like to live tweet, the Twitter tag for today's webinar is #CMS. The slides will be emailed to you after today's presentation and available on Percussion.com. And there will be time for Q&A post-webinar. So please type your questions into the chat window and we'd be happy to answer them for you. I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Dan Flanigan is the VP of Products at Percussion Software. Dan is responsible for product strategy at Percussion, which includes product management, product marketing, user experience, and product documentation. Dan has a passion for user experience and bringing consumer web ease of use to enterprise software, believing that user engagement is the key to product success. Percussion software is the next generation of web content management. Percussion transforms how you manage content, making it easier than ever to accelerate your content marketing initiatives. Percussion software is used by AIDS.gov, Lancaster Bible College, Mass.gov, Sunoco, and Vegas.com. You can learn more about our products on Percussion.com. With that, take it away, Dan.
All right, thank you, Alexis. At the 1 o'clock hour, you've either just eaten, you're in the middle of eating, or you're hungry. So I'll try to keep this lively since I know this time of day, you might be a little bit sleepy. So here we go. What I want to talk about today is our LiveFirst technology. And when we launched LiveFirst, what LiveFirst allowed us to do was not only accelerate the process of migrating your site onto our CMS, but it also provided really a whole new approach to content management projects, allowing you in a way that was not possible with other systems to go live before really you had done any of the types of traditional work that you would do in a content management project. So we have a customer that recently purchased LiveFirst, and they're a great example of what LiveFirst allows you to do that wouldn't have been possible previously. So this customer contracted with LiveFirst, and their contract for their other system, which was a SaaS-based system, was up for renewal. And so when they told their current provider, or their previous provider at this point, that they wouldn't be renewing, they were told their site was going to be shut off at their termination date unless they paid for the next year. And that termination date was in 7 days. So they had 7 days to either decide that they had to pay for another year of service with their old CMS, or find some way to get off of their existing hosting infrastructure, their existing CMS, and move forward with LiveFirst. So what they did is they immediately imported their site using LiveFirst. And when they did that, what that does is that brings over all of their content, all of their CSS, their JavaScript, basically everything that's in use by their site, images, PDFs, documents, etc., brought them over into the Percussion CMS. They then published to a test environment to make sure that there was no loss of fidelity in the process of importing their site. And they began their QA. So they went through and they tested and made sure everything was working. They identified a few things that didn't come across with perfect fidelity in the course of the import. They found a few CSS things where maybe some spacing got got bumped. They saw some things that they said, oh, that needs some work, but for right now, we're actually, we don't have to publish that. So for now, we'll just not publish that content. It won't be anything hurt by not having some of these pages, some of their dynamic content live. And within 5 days, they were able to publish their site, go live, and tell their now former CMS and hosting provider, thanks, we don't need to renew, we're all set, go ahead and shut the site off. So that was remarkable, right? And that is definitely an extreme, but this is the reality of what LiveFirst allows you to do. It allows you to approach your content management migration and your content management implementation in a way that you never would have thought of in the past. So let's talk about what a traditional implementation plan looks like with a CMS. And when you go out and you look on, you do a Google search, as I did on implementation plans, you see a whole variety of just gigantic checklists of all of the things that you have to worry about. But if you start to boil it down to a few main phases that you can look at as part of your project. And the first of these I'll call modeling. And when you're modeling, really what you're looking at is, sort of what are the goals and objectives of my site? Why do I want to move? Why am I either looking at a CMS in the first place or looking to migrate CMSs? What am I hoping to achieve with my web presence? And start to look at, overall what it is that I want to get out of my website. You start to identify, well, what are the available resources that we have? What skills does our staff have? What technologies do we want to use versus what skill set do we have in-house? What skills might we have to hire? And then we start to define, knowing what our resources are, knowing what our objectives are, we're going to define our project plan. Right? And from there, you're going to map out the different phases of the project, who's going to be working on them, what are the milestones that you want for each step in the process. And at that point, it's also extremely important to define your governance process, right? Who is going to be responsible for reviewing and approving your design? Who is going to be responsible for reviewing content? Does some content need to go through legal review? Does some content, can some content be published directly by content contributors? What, is it different for blogs versus other content? You start to put together all of those. How do I want to govern my website going forward? And then as part of that governance process and as part of the project plan, you also have this challenge during your implementation of your new website of parallel development. Right? You've got a new website that you want to have, and it's got goals and objectives and things that you want on there, and you've got your existing website. And in the time that it takes for you to get that new website up, you're probably not going to leave your existing website static and not do anything with it, right? That's a SEO death warrant there. So you've got to continue to be putting new content on your site. So what's your governance process to make sure that every new piece of content you put out on your existing website finds a home on your new website, right? You want to make sure that nothing gets left behind and none of your new content, but you also want to minimize that effort, right? And the longer your project takes to implement your new website, the harder that parallel development is, the more rigid and structured you need to make sure that is, so that you never you never put something only in live and never in your new site, or vice versa. From there, you move into implementation. Now, if you were on a traditional development platform, most CMSs these days, whether it's open source or commercial systems, they're really a development platform more than a product. You would actually be starting to define your framework before you ever got to implement and design your website. So you'd be doing things like defining your content types, defining your workflow, defining your roles. One of the beauties of CM1 is that we've productized so many of these things so that they're out of the box instead of things that you have to worry about implementing. So on day one, what you can start to do is just look at things like, what is my design going to look like? Where am I going to get my CSS? And start implementing your CSS, implementing your JavaScript. What jQuery are we going to use? Things of that nature. You're going to define your site information architecture. So what is your folder structure going to look like? What do you want as your primary navigation? What's your secondary navigation look like? Where do you want dynamic auto lists that show you content based on criteria such as tags or categories or based on dates? You're going to go through the process of template creation. So what are the templates that you want to put in place so that as you add new content, it fits into those structures? And then defining your workflow, roles, and users. And again, with Percussion, it's a visual drag and drop interface for you to be able to define your workflow, so it doesn't involve needing to code, needing to write complex logic to define your workflow. It can be done through a simple user interface. Same thing with defining your roles, and with users, you could either be, depending on the number of content contributors, you could either be creating those manually or doing an integration with your LDAP server to bring your users in. So you go through all this work, and that's the bulk of the work in a traditional content management implementation or website project is in your implementation. Unless, of course, migration is your main point. Right? Depending on the size of your site, migration can be one of your biggest challenges. You're either going through the process of just, copy and pasting, sort of the, a thousand monkeys with 1,000 typewriters. Instead, it's probably in many of our cases a room full of temps that are cutting and pasting content from the old site into the new site, and then you have to worry about making sure they don't accidentally paste in formatting or tags or anything like that that throws off the site design. So that copy-paste is fraught with errors. Or you can go script-based traditionally, and that relies on either APIs of your existing site or your existing CMS, or if those don't exist, some sort of screen scraping technique. And that process is also fraught with errors because it's reliant in consistency on your source website. All of your pages, or you have to define certain page structures. Pages look like this so that the scripts know how to grab the right content from the right places. And if that's not the case, what you end up doing is writing the main rule, and then you write 1,000 exceptions in order to be able to get through that scripting process. And there's a lot of heavy testing with it, even though the final click of the button runs through the migration. All of the work to get to that click of the button can be almost as intensive as just the copy-paste effort. The more you need a CMS, the worse this process is likely to be for you. From there, you start to look at the training and rollout. And depending on the number of content contributors, that determines what kind of material you'll need. If you're in a typical EDU type of environment where you've got distributed content across a lot of content developers, again, that's where your governance that you set up at the very beginning is important, because you're not only are you teaching people how to enter content, but you're explaining what the rules are, what the process is, so that everybody understands and is on the same page as it relates to the process. But LiveFirst really disrupts this approach. We like to call it, internally, we call it a rolling thunder approach. Because what LiveFirst allows you to do is really start to choose what you want as your priority. You're not sort of forced into that traditional structure that I just walked through. Instead, you can somewhat dictate your own structure. So let me tell you a little bit about what that looks like before I actually show you how that looks in the product. Instead of your first phase being modeling, your first phase really becomes prioritization, right? You're still going to go through the process of deciding what your goals and priorities are. But what you're going to be able to do is say, well, what's the first most important thing that we want to do? The first most important thing you might want to do is, well, we've been dying to add calls to action on all of our landing pages, but that process is so hard. We have to involve developers. We don't have enough developers. And so, that might be your first phase. You might be just saying, well, I want to redesign my home page. It looks stale. It looks out of date. And that might be your priority. You might be going for a total new design. That may be your priority, right? And so you might be looking at changing everything. But at least you've done that up front. You've had that conversation up front. And that means also that you can push some things lower in the stack, lower in the priority stack. For example, when you first import your site, if you have no plans to change your information architecture, to change your navigation, the way LiveFirst works, you just import your existing navigation. You don't have to change it. You don't have to touch it. So implementation takes that whole step out of the equation until you want to change your navigation, at which point that task comes on the table for you to go, okay, now's the time for us to redesign our navigation. We're going to do that now. So what it does is it really removes some steps. It removes entirely. Some steps it defers. And some steps it just makes easier. So once I've done my prioritization of what it is that I want to do in my content management system and with my content management system, the next step is import. So using the LiveFirst technology, you're going to import your entire site, and then from there you're going to inventory. And so as you do your inventory, you understand what you have. What we find time and time again that LiveFirst has shown us is that what people think they have in their website, they don't necessarily have on their website. They find that there are assets missing, broken links all over the place. And so the import process also kind of sheds light on things about your website that you actually never knew, or maybe you knew, but they were kind of not, everybody, it was the dirty little secret nobody wanted to talk about. So now it's all out in the open. We know what's wrong, and we know what we have to go address, and it allows you to go do that. And then from there, you take on what it is that you want to take on. And as it says here, lather, rinse, repeat. You're going to prioritize. You're going to implement that first thing that's important to you. Roll out, launch your site. Reassess what your priorities are. Decide if that's still the most, what's still the most important thing on the list. Take that on, implement it, launch that onto your live site. Reassess. Continue through that path. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to transition over into product and show you what that looks like. So I'm going to jump over here into LiveFirst, and I've logged in to my website, into CM1, the Percussion CMS. I've got a nice little dashboard here, and if I want to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my site. Now what we've done for the purposes of our own internal testing is we've created a sample website that we call samples.percussion.com, right? And in this site, I've got products pages, I've got services, I've got a coming soon page. So, I've got the information that I need that shows some sample layouts that I can import into my homepage, that I can import into Percussion. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to just copy this URL, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to go create my new site. www.samples.com. And I'm going to enter in my URL. And I'm going to kick off the process of importing this site. Now, while I'm importing, it's nice enough to give me a little video that explains what I'm going to have to do next in the system so that I can understand what happens next. In the meanwhile, I can see all of the things it's doing up here. It's importing the site. It's importing the JavaScript. It's importing my CSS files. It's finding all of my background images, my icon file, all of the stuff that I need to import into the site. It's pulling them in, and it's putting them in the right place in Percussion so that we can manage it. It's updating links dynamically so that all of the links, once they're imported into the system, are all relative. So if I want to, I can start moving files around, and I don't have to worry about broken internal links. And once I see that process is done, I can go ahead and click done, and that takes me over here into my design manager. And my design manager is a location that shows me all of my templates for my system, as well as all of the pages that have been assigned to each template. So in the course of importing the home page, it created a template for that home page. But that home page is fairly unique, so I'm not going to actually do anything with that today. But what I can do is I can go over here and I can look at all of the pages that have been imported that are not yet assigned to a template. And so I can go here to this products page. And I know this products page, right? I was just looking at it over here, right? I went to the products page. This is what it looks like. And I know that this is a very, very typical page, right? It's got a common structure. And so I want to turn that into a template. So what I can do is I can use a page and model a template based on an existing page. So to do that, I'm going to go to Products, and I'm going to say, create a template from this page. So now I have this template. I'm going to call it the Products template. And I'm going to go ahead in and take a look at this template. So when I imported this page, what it did is it imported just one giant blob of HTML, and it put it on this page. And again, I could publish this right now, and I could replace my existing website, and it would look exactly like my old website. From a user visiting the website's perspective, they would never know that I went from being in Dreamweaver, and Fireworks to being managed in a CMS. It'd be seamless. But what I want to do as the website administrator is I want to actually turn this page now into a template. So to do that, what I want to do is I want to break this page into a series of chunks, or what we call regions and widgets. So to do that, I'm going to use our Design Inspector tool. And so what the Design Inspector tool does is it looks at the HTML structure of the page, and it tells me how I can break this down into sections. So what it does in this case, it found a series of divs, for those of you who are technical, right, that it was able to break the page down into. So I'm going to go ahead and I say, yeah, I'm going to stack these, and it then splits that giant HTML blob into a series of HTML sections. Right, so you can see the little dotted lines here. So I've got this header up at the top. I've got this region here. It shows me that I can't break this section down any further. This section here is into a couple side-by-side regions, so I'm going to select that and then split that into a couple regions. And again, I've got another section. I could keep breaking this down into smaller and smaller pieces, but really, because I don't really need to, my goal here is to make this so that it can be used by my content contributors. So I don't need to get as granular as if I were building it from the ground up. I just need to get to a practical place where users can use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my changes. And now I'm going to go over to content. I'm going to decide what content on this page belongs on the template. So in this case, I'm going to say, well, this region up here, this belongs to the template. And this region belongs to the template. And this navigation off to the side here, this belongs to the template. But these sections, the banner image and this main area here, those are both unique to the page. And as I mentioned before, that when it imported it, it turned it into just HTML. But I know my editors don't want to edit HTML. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert these two sections into rich text. And rich text basically gives your content contributors an interface that's similar to Microsoft Word for them to be able to do their content contribution. It makes their lives a lot easier. And I'm going to go ahead and save. Now at this point, I have a functioning template. If I were to go up here and create a new page, I'm going to call it Dan because I'm a little self-centered. All right, and I've got a new page now that's using this template. So if I look at this new page, I'm not allowed to edit the header because that's part of the template. I'm not allowed to edit the footer, and I'm not allowed to edit this navigation over here. But I can come in here into the main content area, and I can say, and I can start to type in text. And I can style it, right? I can assign it, I'm going to say that this is a header 1. And what's beautiful, because I've already imported the CSS, it's already going to pick up all of that styling directly from the CSS I've imported so that my H2 looks correct, my body text looks correct. And again, up here with my rich text, if I wanted to, I could come up here and I could browse for an image that I wanted to insert and insert it into the page. So in a very short period of time, I was able to get to a place where my content contributors could very easily start to add their own content, add new pages. Then, as an administrator, I'm going to go back to that design manager, and I'm going to find those pages that look like the products page. For example, my marketing cloud here I know is a product, and I'm going to drag that over. And my performance cloud here, I know that I'm going to drag that one over. And at this point now, if I were to go edit that marketing cloud, as a content contributor, again, I can see that this region up here I can't edit. The main region, but I could start to come in here and I could start to add, to my content and start to edit my existing content again immediately. Within 15 minutes, I'm at a place where my content contributors could be productive. So that was really, when we talked about that case study, that was really what that first customer or that customer did in importing their site. They imported it. They defined a couple of templates. They had like a level 2 landing page template and a level 3 landing page template. They went in, defined those templates. They assigned pages. They had to make a few CSS tweaks here or there. And they were able to publish in a very short period of time. They got to productivity. Now, from there, we can start to do things that are more advanced. So, for example, if I were to go back to that, that template, and I said, oh, well, I said that I wanted to start adding calls to action. Well, I could come over here on the template, and I could add a form, right? So I could add in a form. I'll save that. And as part of the form, right, I can give it a name. I can say the basic properties, and come in here to the content, and I can start to define this form. So this form, I could come in and say I want certain fields, right? I want to add a text field, an entry field, radio buttons. I can have somebody fill out a form and submit that. And so now the call to action could be on the products page, could be come see a demo. I mean, if you go look at the Percussion website, we've got those all over the place. So that, again, if that was my first priority, I've got a drag and drop, easy to use interface where a person could go in, they could define a form. They'd be working with their designer to make sure if they needed new CSS, new classes added to their base CSS, they could do that so that the form was stylized properly. And I could very rapidly publish that out and be, capturing calls to action that I previously wasn't able to capture. Similarly, when I'm at that point where I'm ready to go ahead and start working on my navigation, and I'm not with this site, so I'll jump over to a different site. I'll go over to Conservia. I can start to go ahead and change my navigation so that once I've got my navigation all set up, I could decide, well, this is how it came across when I first imported it. I had these folders, and I've been dying to move this project planner under the Analyze section. It doesn't make sense to me here, so I'm going to expand Analyze, and I'm going to drag the project planner down here, or I'm going to drag this over here and be part of the Analyze. And so the project planner never made sense to me as a level 2. It's now going to be a level 3 under Analyze. And that's reflected, as soon as I publish, that's reflected immediately on my site. None of my links are broken. I don't have to worry about going in and doing any of that because everything's managed. So again, very quickly after I've done my import, I can start to enhance my information architecture. I can start to add auto lists and things of that nature so that I'm very quickly able to get productive. Now, the last thing I'll show you today is just the beginnings of what we did when we did a redesign. So we wanted to redesign our homepage. So we had a homepage that had been, we had in a homepage. We were believed in sort of the above-the-fold philosophy. We wanted to have a sort of a hero image and not have people scroll in our homepage. And we changed our mind. We said, well, we want a new homepage. We want to put a lot more information on the homepage. So we had we worked with a designer, and we got this new homepage. They posted it up on their, on their site. This is, as you can see, this is not a Percussion domain. And so what we did is we went in here and we went to our design manager for our samples.percussion.com site, or for our real site. And we added a template. And we added a template by importing it. So if I go over here, I copy in that URL, it's going to import it. It's using the same technology that we use to import your site to import that design from the designer. So it's importing all of the CSS, all of the images, everything. All of that, again, gets placed in the right place in the in our system, so that I can immediately go and see that that design came over without any, with some minimal tweaks that we had to make. We noticed that some of the links got turned blue instead of white, but very easily we were able to go in and start to take this, break it down into chunks. We decided, what stuff was important for us to be able to edit and manage right away, what stuff we wanted to wait. And so, our own, we're definitely dog fooders here. We use our own CMS, and we used our own LiveFirst technology to import our design from our partner so that we were able to quickly get a new design in place into our system, publish it out, and now we've got our new homepage. I'll just open up that so you can see we've got the homepage up. This section is now, a dynamic section. As we post new blog posts, it gets updated here. What was a static example of an app, we took out the HTML he gave us, and we inserted our own app. web app here so that we've got a calculator that shows you how fast you can get live with Percussion LiveFirst. So we're able to do some really nice things and, again, very quickly and nimbly get a new design out in a way that we never would have been able to do in the past. We would have had to essentially get a design and then recreate it in the CMS. This way we were able to import it, publish it, and go. So Alexis, that's really what I wanted to cover today. I'd love to hear if there are any questions. I see some things, flashing things on the screen here, so I assume there's some questions.
Great, Dan. Well, thank you for presenting today. Definitely learned a lot about the process of an implementation. So we have some good questions from the audience. You know, a lot of people ask questions about the client you discussed earlier. One of the questions was, how long did it take for them to fix the items that they didn't transfer properly?
Well, again, it took them less than 5 days because they were able to tweak it. Generally, what it was small CSS stuff. As I showed you in this example, when we imported LiveFirst, you might not be able to see it perfectly on the screen, but when we imported our homepage design, like for example, there must have been like a conflict between our existing CSS and the CSS that came from our designer, because the links here, instead of being white, were blue. So we had to go in and do some tweaks there. We had to do some tweaks about with the navigation to make sure we could take that and transfer it to other pages. So the person who was working on the implementation from that customer was able to do all of that in less than 5 days. And that person was not a skilled, you know, it wasn't like a CSS pro. That person was, you know, had some CSS skills, but was still fairly junior with it and was doing a little bit of trial and error. And it was, I think, about a 1,000-page site. So it also wasn't, you know, it wasn't enormous, but it wasn't small either. So she was able to go through, quickly identify some issues, do some tweaks. Because it's all WYSIWYG, she was able to see the result of her changes right away. And again, within 5 days, she got everything resolved and was able to publish.
Great, thank you. So the next question we have, does LiveFirst import metadata and content metadata as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the really nice things about the process is if I go into any one of these pages that I import, this is probably a bad example because it's just that home page, but basically it imports all of the page metadata and parses it and again puts it in the right place. So you know, if you have your title tags, if you have code before the body start, code after the body start, code in the head, it'll import all of that. So I'll see if I've got some examples here. So I'll go into my index page here. And if I go into view metadata, I'm not sure that this sample site we have it, but you know, it imports the site, it imports the display title, if there was a page summary, any additional code. So this had head content, if there's code after the body start, code after the body close. It also generates some SEO-friendly things such as the page title on the fly. So it imports you know, the metadata and parses it correctly. So again, you don't have that cut and paste effort after the fact.
Great, thank you. So to help me through this process of going through LiveFirst, what type of support do you have available that can help me walk me through the process?
Sure. So we have a coaching program that we recommend for all of our customers, you know, which is different than a traditional implementation project because what we really focus on is making our customers productive. So you'll have coaching sessions in which the whole process is explained to you, that we walk you through it, where you're doing it, and we're coaching you in real time so that you're getting the hang of the tool. And then we have a customer community where if you have any questions or challenges, you can post questions, and our customer support team, the same people that are helping you with the coaching, will walk you through it. So they're well versed with the tool. They're pretty technical resources, so they can help you too with tricky things like if your CSS, if something's not right with your CSS, or if you're like, well, what about, we have a web app, what do we do with the web app? They walk people through those things as well. So those resources help as part of getting you productive in your first couple weeks and first 90 days of your project.
Great, thank you. So this is the last question that I have. The example company in which you spoke of, how much content did they actually have, such as web pages and images? And can you just say how long that took again?
Sure. If I recall, it was about it's somewhere in the magnitude of 1,000 pages. I don't have the exact number. And it was a higher education organization. So they also, in addition to a number of web pages, they had a non-trivial number of PDFs, documents, Excel documents, things like that they had posted out on their website. So I would say somewhere between 300 and 500 of those types of documents that were imported, plus just plenty of images. And the actual import process is fairly quick. I mean, typically if you went to import a site, you could go home, you could kick it off at 5 o'clock, go home, and you come in the next day and it's all done. We've had sites of upwards of 25,000 pages that have imported in a matter of a couple days. And we're continually working on refining and improving the speed of the import process. So really the import is the easiest part. You literally just type in your URL and you'll check in on it. Probably the next day it's done.
Great, thank you. So that wraps up all of the questions that we had for today. Just a friendly reminder, the slides will be emailed to you after today's presentation and available on percussion.com. And there will, we also have a LiveFirst Live in 5 document available on our website as well that you can download at percussion.com. Thank you for attending, and we hope you have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.